Steve Beecham, welcome to the Uncommon Philanthropist.
Welcome to Steve. I'm so glad to be here.
Well, you are one of my first guests on the new platform, and I'm excited to be unpacking with people exactly what an uncommon philanthropist is, and having a chance to know you through Rotary and your heart for service and how you're really generating significant impact through your vision and leadership, and we'll get into what that looks like. Everybody around this town knows Steve Beecham, but for those that don't, give us a little something.
I don't know. I'm in the mortgage business. I've been in the mortgage business for 30 years, and so I developed in the mortgage business this idea that what happens if you don't want to go cold call, or you didn't want to go out and say, hey, send me your business, and because we mostly called on real estate agents. And I said, what happens if I change that? And I say, why don't I just give to people? Why don't I give them my time, my assets that I have? And that's another conversation, but just give. And if I do, will some of those people reciprocate? Will they give back? And so I started on that process of doing that, and I built my business through that. And now it's kind of my life purpose. So my whole purpose is to help other people get from where they are right now to where they want to go. And so I see that through a lens with every conversation. So like I'm here today, okay, you're starting this podcast. How can I help you make this podcast better? Not necessarily because I'm here, because maybe there are other guests you need to have, or there's maybe people that need to see this podcast. So I'm just going to give. And you never know. That doesn't mean you're going to do alone with me, but you might be at the grocery store and run into somebody and they say, I need a house. And you say, call this guy. You know?
I know. Absolutely.
So that's because I started doing that, I decided to write a book around the crash in 2009. Our business dropped 90%, and we lost 90% of the people in the mortgage business. It was a disaster. So I decided to write this book because I had the time, and I thought if I wrote the book, that would put me maybe hopefully on a speaking circuit a little bit to generate some income. Yeah. And it did. And so for 2 years, I did more speaking than I did mortgages. And then from that, I've written 3 more books. And so I do speaking. It's kind of my side hustle, if you will. I'm still in the mortgage business, but it's a side hustle. Yeah. So anyway.
And what's the title of your latest book, and what's that about?
A Few Big Ideas. So my thought was, if I'm going to a conference and you're speaking, I want to walk away with a nugget. I want to walk away with something that I can go put in play today or tomorrow, or some idea. I go, yeah, I can do that. And I said, well, what happens if I just come up with a book with all these nuggets? And some of those nuggets are mine, and I stole a bunch of nuggets, right? And so, but it's just a collection of about 60 or 70 ideas that you can do with your business to help you grow your business. And it's going good.
Yeah. You put yourself out there on social media, extolling all kinds of wisdom.
Well, and that's part of, so what it does is those 70 chapters give me 70 videos, if you will, right? So you can create a video every week with a new marketing idea. You just never know who's going to see it. I mean, I just had one, I think it's got 14,000 views on it. I'm like, God, where did that come from? I don't know 14,000. But then you get another one, you get 100 views, right? So you just never know what hits.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Well, I don't know if you know this or not, but the word philanthropy translates to love of humanity.
Really?
Isn't that interesting?
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So it feels like we're at a moment in time when we are not doing that very well, loving our neighbors. How can philanthropy or acts of service begin to help bridge some of those gaps?
Well, I think the problem is that we've lost our sense of community. I don't think that what I'm finding is people want to participate. They don't have a vehicle to participate in or with or somebody. When I call people and say, hey, I need you for this, like the text I just got, we did the last concert, and you came up with a great idea of the tables raising money, and we're trying to sell a door for the American Legion for $1,000, and I'm standing there next to my buddy Ed, and I said, Ed, you need to buy this door for $1,000, and he goes, okay. I mean, there was no way in heck I thought this guy was going to do that. And he said, okay. And then 30 minutes later, he said, now what did I buy? What's it going for? And I said, I'm interested. Why did you do that? He said, you told me to do it. And so that's what's going on out there, is that I can give you, a guy calls me Monday and he says, Steve, is anybody doing anything for these hurricane victims? And I said, I really haven't seen that much. He said, I remember years ago you did a thing for that. So years ago, this mom calls me. Her son and my son went to school together. She calls me, and her son's at University of Alabama, and there was a hurricane that went through Alabama, or a tornado or whatever, and just tore up, and there was a lot of people worried that kids, I think a couple kids got killed there or something. It was terrible in Tuscaloosa. So her kid calls and says, Mom, I want to do something. I want to do some relief. So the mom calls me, and the mom's pretty connected lady. She calls me. She says, what can we do? Blah, blah, blah. Next thing I know, she says, I've got this lady that contacted me that's got a tractor trailer. She's going to drive over from Alabama. I get a hold of Home Depot, and I said, can we park the tractor trailer there and load it up? We filled that thing up twice.
Wow.
We took all of this stuff, water stuff, all this stuff to Tuscaloosa. Everybody in the community got it. I went on Facebook. I started calling people, hey, we need some water. We need some diapers. And people just
showed
dump.
up.
This ties back into your deal where Monday a guy calls me and says, is anybody doing anything? I said, I don't know. I haven't heard anything. And I said, do you have a trailer or anything? He said, yeah. I said, how do we know where the need is? He said, well, my brother-in-law is a fireman in Boone, North Carolina, and it's a disaster. And I said, well, ask him what we need. If you got a trailer, I'll help you put it out. So this guy's a financial advisor, okay? Young financial advisor. So he calls me back. He goes, okay, I got a 12-foot trailer. He says we need, the basics, water, diaper, blah, blah, blah. I said, all right, I'm going to put it out. Put me a little flyer together. The first 3 calls that I get are 3 of the wealthiest ladies in my area. I put them in touch with this guy, and I tell him, I said, dude, you would have never met these people in the community if you hadn't done that.
Right.
Now, that doesn't mean they're going to do any business with him, but if you want to do loans at the country club, you got to join the country club.
That's awesome.
So that's
I think to kind of wrap that up. So people are eager and ready to serve. They just need to kind of be invited to do so.
And it's got to be in their wheelhouse too, right? So for people like us, where we're in touch with all of that, because whatever reason, that's our makeup, right? Yeah. We just have to ask the people what their interest is, or what are they doing, or how are they serving. There are a lot of people silently serving that you don't know. They're tithing at their church. They met somebody somewhere and they send them $25 a month. Or there's a lot of more of that going on than I think most people recognize. But the average person will give more if it sounds like a worthy cause. Yeah. That's been my experience.
Yeah. For sure. Why is it important that we all do our part to make a positive contribution in the world by loving and serving one another?
I don't know that it's our part. I think that people do it because it makes them feel good. Mm-hmm. I think that's why people give. You give to somebody and it makes you feel good. It's a giver's high or whatever. That's why I think people
It's a biological thing that happens.
I think that's why we give. However, there's another part of me that says, because I'm sort of a libertarian and I like the government staying out of our lives, and I'd rather us take our money and do the things with our money that we really want to do with it, instead of have the government say, we're going to provide this, we're going to provide that. So that's kind of my political stance on that. But I think everybody innately, like you said, it's like a DNA thing. They feel better when they give. They just don't know where to give, and they don't know that they don't have to give a large amount. That's another really key factor. They think, well, I don't have 1,000 or I don't have 10,000. Right. They don't know that $25 is a lot of times is awesome.
Yeah, yeah, and it's you're right. It's not always the amount. It's the intent behind the amount. Give what you can give. Start by giving something.
Right.
or finding a cause that you care about. I think, we all do a really good job of planning our retirement and our 401ks, our saving for a house. But I think charitable giving, a lot of times people just don't make it a priority because they're busy doing other things.
Well, you've got that, and then I've got a friend who's very wealthy, and I've been trying to get him to give. His wife wants me to work on him to give, and he doesn't want to give because he said, I had nothing and I made all this money and I don't want to give it away. I want to keep my money that I went out and busted my rear end for to make, and those other people can go do the same thing. So it's going to take time for him to see that there are certain people in certain situations where no money can be.
When you can't take it with you.
So I'll tell you a funny story. So I was sitting around one night. We went to a bunch of us rented a cabin and went up to this cabin. It was just a guy's thing. We were going to play poker and drink and have a good time, smoke cigars. And we're sitting out on the back porch. There's 3 or 4 of us. And most of the guys that were there were all older than me. And so I was probably in my 30s and most of them were in their 50s, I think. And so we started this discussion about who do you give to, right?
Awesome.
Where do you give that you don't think that, because back to the same idea of this guy I'm telling you about that's struggling. These people, do you give to somebody because the dad doesn't go to work or, and they need food or, all these things. And we brought up all these issues. We just went through these issues sitting on the back porch, smoking cigars and drinking bourbon. And we finally, after all of that, we came to the conclusion that the kids that can't fend for themselves, there's no way they can go get the money to do what they need. They can't go get the money to eat. If their mom and dad or whoever their guardian isn't helping them, then they're going to go rob or steal or starve, right? Yeah. And so from that, we decided to do a couple of things. And so we ended up having a charity ball based on the fact of a couple of charities that we picked that we felt like were really focused on kids that had no other option. In other words, if money didn't come into that organization, nothing was going to happen. It wasn't going to grow, it wasn't going to help. They couldn't serve more people.
Yeah.
So that was our big conclusion.
Coordinated around that effort and made that happen.
And I ended up with, I don't know how many of us there were, 5 or 6 of us, I guess. And there was 1 or 2 of the people there that then started giving more and got them more into giving because we talked through it and we realized that there were places that you could give that they felt like there was a true need, right?
Yeah. Well, our financial planner, they have a philanthropic advisor on the team. Mm-hmm. And she's amazing. And she will sit down with you and just, help you figure it out because you can't take the money with you. It's incumbent on us to do something.
Right. And I find a lot of people end up in stuff that they kind of accidentally fall into. Like, a friend of mine's got a therapy, psychology type place. You get a kid that's having issues with addiction or depression, you end up seeing what's going on there. Addiction's a good one. And then, hopefully your child gets through that crisis, and then you say, okay, I didn't know about all of that. I didn't know how all of that worked. Mm-hmm. And then you say, you know what, I'm going to give that. So there's certain people in that ecosystem. Huh?
You talking about Dr. West?
Yeah, Dr. West. So Dr. West is a great example. So some of his best
I love what he's
givers are people who kids had gone through the program. They were able to pay for the program, but then he's let them know that there are other kids that are in the program who can't afford the program, mm-hmm. and he doesn't want to let a kid not get helped, right? And so those parents that could pay didn't even know those programs existed until that situation hit them, right? Or maybe because you've never been through a hurricane, you don't really know what's going on with a hurricane.
Exactly.
But then here's a whole nother thing that bothers me. So hurricane hit in Texas about 5 or 6 years ago. A friend of mine was a developer developing beach communities in this particular part of Texas. Right when it came through, he called another friend of mine and said, hey, I need some help. This place is leveled. My friend called me, my best friend called me and said, hey, man, we need to go to Texas. We need to help. I don't know when I'm coming back, and I'm leaving in 5 minutes. We're going to help the hurricane people. Okay. So we drive all night. We get to Texas, and this guy had bought, basically I would say like a circus tent. He had gotten somebody to bring. It was huge. You could have played football under this tent. It was huge. And people were bringing stuff in, and he had even gone and rented like a forklift thing because people were bringing stuff in on pallets, tractor trailers of pallets, because there was a lot of, people come. So he's setting this stuff up, and we're basically setting up under this tent a store. It looked like a hardware store, if you would. And what I noticed was the people would come in there, and they would go through this thing. They would kind of like make a circle. And we had so much water, and we had so many diapers. We had cleaning wipes, and we had all this stuff. And they were doing stuff like, they were taking stuff like shovels and rakes. Mm-hmm. The number one thing I remember that we didn't have was Clorox or mildew-resistant type sprays and a bottle. So we had some Clorox gallon jugs, but we didn't have a way for them to spray it. Yeah. So these people that had flooded, what I really found out, what they really, really needed was they needed the insurance adjuster to come and give them a claim, and that was starting to happen. But then the problem was there was nobody there to do the work. So they couldn't go back to their house because they needed to cut the sheetrock out around their house. They needed to pull all that out. So really what they had trees on top of buildings and houses. So what they really need, when I came away from that experience going, what they really need, me giving the water and the Clorox and the baby diapers makes me feel good that I've given, and there's some of that need, but there's going to be a lot of that show up. Churches and Rotary clubs and things like that will start doing that, and that's going to start pouring in. But then the people that I know that live up in the area, like around Asheville, they're saying, you can't even hardly get in here, right? And so what's needed really is somebody with a chainsaw. They need somebody to show up with a chainsaw, with gasoline cans with gas already in them. Yeah. Because they don't have power to, I've got electric chainsaw, and I go, they don't have power. I can't even repower my chainsaw, right? They need manual labor. They need construction people. So the real gift to those people, really, if you really wanted to do some damage, is to find somebody in the community like a pastor that says, Miss Sally, whose 80s house has got a tree laying on it, and you send 4 or 5 guys and you work on Miss Sally's house and you cut the tree up and you repair her roof and you get her back in shape. That's a godsend.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's organizations that are mobilized on the ground that are seeking volunteers, like Samaritan's Purse. They actually are out of Boone, North Carolina, so they are there. They know the area. You can volunteer to serve food, or you're right. They need people, and they need money.
Yeah, so you can take your money to pay for the labor, but I've been on a couple of trips where stuff would happen, and there would be local people. It seems like there would be like guys that are contractors that are real involved with their church, and they would hear about a little Baptist church somewhere in this community. And they would take their truck and their trailer, and they would get 4 or 5 guys from the church, and they would go and spend a week, and they would do that manual labor. And what I'm saying to you is, it's not that other stuff doesn't count, but if you are serious about making some damage and some serious help for somebody, that's the best way to do it. Yeah. For natural disasters.
Yeah, for sure. Boots on the ground. Let's go help.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about your concerts and your love of music. Tell us about that whole effort.
Part of the stuff that I write about and I talk about and I tell people about, and from a business standpoint, I love helping people that have a business in a community. And so what's happened in our communities, which is part of the charity problem, is in the metro areas and places like where we live here in Alpharetta. And there's a lot of those, and there's a lot of money focused in those metro areas. The problem is people are moving into that area, and if they don't have kids or they're not connected to a church, they're really not connected to the community. So they don't have a sense of community. And so what I've noticed over time is that people want a go-to person, and they don't have a go-to person anymore. They don't have that thing that I had when I was a kid. Like, your mom says, that's your dentist, that's your doctor, that's who fixes, that's where you buy your tires. That's the guy that's going to paint your house, right? We knew those people in the community that did those goods and services. But now people don't know that. And so one of the things I'm trying to teach business people is you want to be the go-to person in your community for what it is that you do. You want to be my guy. I got a guy, right? Mm-hmm. So you want to be, when somebody calls and says, I need a painter, and I want to be able to say, I got a guy, right? Yeah. Here's my painter. So you're jockeying as a business person to be a go-to guy for your line of work. This is how I see the world, okay, in my town. Yeah. So how do you do that? Well, you have to be a politician in a roundabout way. You have to, kiss a lot of babies and shake a lot of hands, and you've got to be a person that's out in the community meeting people so that the amount of people that know you and know what you do grows as you do more stuff in the community. But one of those ways that you can access the community is to access the community through something other than what your line of work is. Okay? So for me to walk around town and to go to a hairdresser and walk in and say, who owns this hair salon? Oh, that's Sally. Hey, Sally, I'm Steve Beecham. I'm in the mortgage business. Do you need a loan? No. So I don't go see Sally because I don't have a reason to call on Sally. But the truth of the matter is maybe some days Sally needs a loan. Maybe some days one of Sally's hairdressers needs a loan. Yes. Maybe one day one of Sally's friends needs a loan, right? So it's valuable for me to know Sally, but I don't have a way to go see Sally because I don't really want to go talk to her about the mortgage business because it's not top of mind right now for her, right? Right. Okay. So now what I came up with in my mind years ago was if I get involved in other things that are great for the community and give the community a sense of community to where people go, I love living here. If I can come up with those things and do those things, and it gives me a reason to go out and meet the people in the community to say, hey, I'm doing this. If this flips your boat, I'd love for you to participate. So that's how it comes back to me. So that way I'm giving and I receive stuff back. So now if I do so I'm sitting downtown, my wife and I, we've got this brand new city center. It's like 9:00 on a Friday night, and we're sitting on a park bench, and she's drinking her wine, and I'm drinking my bourbon because we have open container, and we're thinking, this is awesome, right? And I'm looking around at the restaurants, and they're putting the chairs on the tables, and they're sweeping the floors, and it's 9:00 on a Friday, and I'm like, Mary, we got all of this cool stuff, and everybody's at home. Yeah. We got to do something about that. We need to extend it to at least 10 o'clock. She goes, what are you going to do? And I'm like, I don't know. Maybe we need to bring some live music downtown, right? So I decided that I was going to go explore that. And one thing led to another, and we just did 14 concerts, and we raised $90,000 this year, right? So, but what it did was, so I go and I said, okay, I'm going to have a band. I'm going to do one a month, and I'm going to do like 4 bands. And the guy tells me it's like $3,500 for the stage and the lights and all this stuff. And I need to pay the bands a little something. I tell them I can pay them $500, and I need like $10,000 to do these 4 concerts. And the city goes, you can't do it on the green. And I'm like, why? They said, it's a park. It has to be city sponsored. It has to be for the city. And I said, okay, I'm just trying to cover my costs. At this point, I'm not even thinking about giving away extra money. I just want to make it happen to bring people downtown. So I figured out that if I went over to one of the restaurants and I put the stage on the restaurant property, I could face it to the green, and then I was okay. And so then I go to about 5 or 6, or I think I went to 10 of my friends and said, hey, guys, can y'all give me $150. If the 10 of us give $350, we can pay for this thing. And they all jumped in and said, sure, I'll do that, Beech. And I went and made little banners and hung them across the front of the stage and across the top, and it was tacky as it could be. But we did it, and we pulled it off, and the crowd started coming, and so from there it just grew, right? But it gave me a reason to go talk to my friends. It gave me a reason to go meet a new business person to say, hey, this might be something. So now I've developed that. So I've got one restaurant. Now I've got this great relationship with this restaurant, and we do stuff together. He just gave me, left it. He's got a son that's got some, I don't know, learning issues or something. I don't know, but he's trying to raise money for a little camp. So he calls me like, hey, how can I raise money for this camp? Let's talk about how we can do something. You bring your people to my restaurant. I'll donate part of the proceeds. So now he's rolling, right? But it all started with me going to him going, hey, man, can I do a concert here? I think we can sell some more tacos if I do, you know.
Yeah. Love it. I mean, that is, you see why I had you on here, because you are such a philanthropist at heart. I mean, I don't know if you think of yourself as a philanthropist, but you embody that.
But I mean, if I'm living here and I love living here and I want to continue love living here, certain people have got to step up and make cool stuff happen.
Yeah.
Right? It just doesn't. You can't. One person can make a difference, and people don't think that's the case. But those examples are everywhere. You know. And because I do that, I get calls from other people trying to do similar things in other places. Mm-hmm. Another town has called me, hey, we want to do what you're doing. We want to grow that downtown sense of community. How are you doing it? You know, I've got somebody, I had coffee this morning with a person that's doing some art stuff, and they're wanting to figure out how to grow that and do that. And I said, you know, here's some crazy ideas for you. And they're like, oh, okay, cool. That's neat. I hadn't thought about that. And so I'm helping them, just like you've helped me with what I'm doing. I mean, I still can't get over that table idea that you gave me. So she gave me a great idea. Anyway, so that's, you know.
Well, and the project we're working on for Rotary to renovate the American Legion, that's super cool.
Well, so, you know, I hear the American Legion, so that's how that works, right? The American Legion is saying, hey, we struggle to keep our lights on, right? You know, and the guys don't pay that much in dues, and anyway, so I go over there, and I've been over there a bunch. I've done we did a lot of Ducks Unlimited events there, and I go over there and I go, you know what, the place is kind of tired looking.
It is
right?
tired.
So then I asked some of the ladies from Rotary, go by there and look at that. We need to maybe wonder if we had our Rotary meetings there. And they come back and they go, well, it kind of smells like smoke and it looks kind of
But they have this amazing space.
This amazing space. So then I came up with the idea, okay, what happens if we make it nice enough to where we would want to have our Rotary meeting there? Then maybe other people would come by and say, hey, I'd like to have my event there. I'd like to have my wedding reception here. Now they can rent the hall out and make some money. And so that was my thought behind all of that. How can we help that happen? So I'm back to this win-win, right? So then the Rotary Club, if we move there, and then we've got a more permanent spot.
Yep.
And they're glad to have us, and we're glad to be there. Plus, we're helping them make more money, which hopefully they'll keep the place up, make it nice. So everybody wins. Yeah. I mean, what's wrong with that?
I know. It's going to be so close to me, too.
That's better for you, and it's further for me. I got to walk further.
Ride my bike down there. So let's talk a little bit about Rotary. Okay. And I know I'm relatively new there, but you've been in that club for a long time. What got you connected with Rotary, and what has been your experience with the organization?
So when I was 25, I had my first business. I had a clothing store, and the Rotary Club in Roswell was the club to be in Roswell. And everybody in that club they were basically my mom and dad's age. And so I went to join that club, and they blackballed me. Because they said I was too young. And back then you had categories that you were in, and there was nobody in my category, and they blackballed me. And I found out who some of the fathers were that I went to school with their kids. They just didn't want me in their club because it was a men's club. This was back before ladies were involved. A year later, I come back because they said, okay, we got those guys worked out. We want you in. A couple guys said, we want you in. I go back in, and I get blackballed a second time. Now, all these people knew me, and I knew all these people. I grew up with all these people, but they were just determined that I was too young to be. I wasn't ready for their club yet. Well, at that time, the Roswell Club had started, Rotary clubs would spur off and start other clubs. And so some guys decided they wanted to start an Alpharetta club. And so they're like, we'd love to have you, man, because right now we don't really have anybody. Well, I was such a Roswell guy at the time. I'm like, nah. So the Alpharetta Club started, and then a year later, I came into the Alpharetta Club. And so there's, one, maybe two guys that have been in that club longer than me. So I've been one of the oldest tenured. Then what happened, ironically, was a funny thing, and this is something a lot of people haven't experienced before, but clubs can kind of move with the people that come in. Certain people come into a club, and they start bringing a lot more of their friends in, and it can change the complexity of the club. And our club started changing pretty dramatically from the way it was. It was almost like a fraternity house at first, and then it became more like a Methodist men's club. And because certain guys got in and started bringing their people in. And then the guys that were original like me, we would have great parties and have a lot of fun, and then it wasn't fun anymore, and we couldn't do that anymore. And so a lot of us left the club. So I left the club for a couple of years and moved down to Roswell and spurred off another club. I went down there for 2 or 3 years, and then I finally came back to the Alpharetta Club. So I had a span of, 3 or 4 years where I wasn't in the club. But what Rotary for me is an organization. The way I tell people is you join Rotary because you're already an established business person in the community, and you're established enough to where you realize it's time for you to give back to the community. And that's the kind of people that I look for. That doesn't mean that other people can't contribute with other stuff. We dropped a lot of the rules and regulations that we originally had, and in some cases we've brought in people into Rotary that I felt like weren't the right fit for Rotary. They might have been a better fit for another club, but not for Rotary. For me, Rotary needs to be people that are doing business in the community that want to give back to that community. So like you look at our club right now, I wish we had more of the Main Street type businesses. Like I don't even think we have anybody that owns a restaurant in our club. We don't have anybody that owns a hardware store in our club or a shoe store. Or we got one clothing person in our store. But you need to, if you go out. So when I wrote my first book, what happened was I contacted Rotary clubs around around the state that I thought were smaller clubs. And so I started, saying, hey, if you need a speaker, because they're dying to have speakers. I knew they were dying to have speakers. Because I watched the Roswell Club. At the time, they had about 150 people. They get any speaker. They get the governor, right? Yeah. And we're up here in Alpharetta, and we got 50. And we're like, we just need the garbage guy to come tell us he comes by on Tuesday, right? I mean, we're dying for speakers. So I said, maybe I'll go out and talk about my book, and it'll help me become a better speaker. So I spent a year speaking to probably 50, 60 Rotary clubs. And so I saw what clubs were successful and which clubs weren't successful. And the main thing that I came away with, and I think I was in Thomasville, Georgia, and I did a speech down there, and they had a really big club. They had like 175 members, I want to say. And they met at the country club, and if you were in that club, you were somebody in that community. They just didn't let anybody in the club, right? But what I noticed was after the club meeting, towards the end, I was the club president or somebody, and he goes, Mayor, Chief, whatever, so, I need y'all to meet me over here. And so I went over there and kind of eavesdropped in the meeting, and basically the Rotary was planning their annual parade. So all the people that needed to make that parade happen were in that club. The police chief, the fire chief, the parks and rec guy, the mayor, the city council people, they met over in a corner, and within about 10 minutes, that deal was done. Okay, you got the streets blocked off. Okay, we're going to need EMS, blah, blah, blah. We're going to do the floats. Jimmy, you got that? Yeah, we got that. John, you got that? And it was done. And I said, that's what we're missing. And so my mission to Rotary clubs around the country have been, you've got to give away free membership to your mayor, your police chief, your fire chief, your state rep, your state senator. There are certain players in town. And then when other people in business know those players are in your club, it gives you that something that people go, oh, I want to hang out with those people, right? And so, I don't know, where did I start off on this?
No, we were just talking about your experience with Rotary.
Yeah, so that helped me kind of start shaping our club. So it was my idea to bring in the police chief and the mayor, and that's been a great thing. And we just brought in the state rep and our state senator, and I think that's actually, I was concerned they wouldn't show up that much, and they've started showing up.
They're there a lot.
Because now they realize, hey, these are my people, right? These are the people that can help support me. These people can help me with my election, throw a party for me, put a sign in their front yard, and that's who they want to meet, right? And I can get a sounding board off of those people. So for me, Rotary's been one of the best things I've ever done, and it's so underutilized because I tell people all the time, it's because I can go down to the Roswell Club, I can go to the Woodstock Club, I can go down to the Atlanta Club, and you can meet people and be a part of that organization and not even have to join their organization, right? Because if you're a Rotarian in one club, you can go to any club. Then we had a thing that happened where one of the guys early on in our club came to me one day and he said, hey, man, this guy just spoke at my church, and he's a landscaper in Dalton, Georgia, and he's built this mission sort of thing in Haiti. And he's trying to get people to come. I think we ought to get the Rotary Club to go. Long story short, we ended up taking about, 10 of us to Haiti to this guy's place. And, man, was that an eye-opener. And we were down there in Haiti, and from that experience, when we went down there and we did physical labor. I mean, we were, we just did physical labor. And we started doing that every year. And so our club has had this real long history of international service. And I've gone to almost all the Central American countries. I mean, we've gone to Panama, and we took a health thing. I pulled teeth out of people's mouth. Dennis was like, he filled up a 5-gallon bucket of teeth. He's like, dude, I can't pull anymore. Get over here. Let me show you how to pull these teeth. And I mean, these people were so excited to get this rotten tooth out of their mouth. We were both happy. Anyway, I mean, it was just, I can give you so many experiences.
Good living, right?
But here's a Rotary moment for you. So I'm sitting under the one tree in Haiti, because in Haiti, everybody cut the trees down because they didn't have good electricity, and they had to use the firewood, right, to cook with. So this guy that had this compound had this huge tree in his compound. So we're sitting under this tree, and me and the richest guy in Alpharetta at the time, who was in the Rotary Club, and I'm the youngest guy. He's an older rich guy. And we're sitting under this tree, and we're drinking a bourbon. And we're talking, and I said, I asked him something about Rotary, and he said, Beech, he said, when you're young, you've got the energy and the back to do the hard work, and then as you get older, like me, you don't quite have the energy in the back, but you got the pocketbook. And he said, so you'll see through your life, right now you're the one doing all the physical labor, and there'll become a time where you're not doing the physical labor, but you're giving the money to help the physical labor work. Yeah. And so that was a big aha moment for me. And I said, you know what? I'm noticing now that I'm getting in my 60s, I'm doing a lot more of the money giving than I am the actual physical labor. And I think that people, you can give of your time or your talent, right, or your finances. So there are more than one ways. You don't have to write a check to help people and be philanthropic. You can go give them your physical time, right?
Yeah, for sure.
All right, here's my story. I'm on the board at Norfolk Community Charities. And I said to them, I want to sit in with a social worker. So what would happen, people would come in, and they would put them with a social worker, and the social worker would talk to them to find out what the circumstances were. And so we would help give them some money for their power bill or their rent or whatever. And what they learned over years was you just didn't give them the money. You would say, okay, we're going to call your landlord. And we would call the landlord from the charities and say, we're gonna pay her rent, or we're gonna give you half of her rent, or this lady's rent, or this guy's rent. And so But the social workers would try to figure out how to best help them and then kind of be a coach for them on how to manage their stuff. So I wanted to sit in with a social worker. So they said, okay. So I go in there and this Hispanic lady comes in there that's about my age at the time, like 45, 50 years old. And she's got her daughter with her who's about 15 years old. And she starts talking to the social worker, and the social worker's interpreting to me. And I'm sitting there kind of like you and I, and they're sitting there. And basically the lady is saying that she caught her husband with another woman, so she left. She's from somewhere in South America. She doesn't have a green card. So she's working at one of the cheaper hotels. They only pay her about, at this time, say the minimum wage was $10. They were paying her like $7 an hour or $5. They were paying her next to nothing. They only had work for 4 or 5 days of the week. She couldn't find any place else to work. And she said her biggest concern was they're living in this apartment complex with all these Hispanic young men, and she was constantly worried about her daughter being there coming home from school, and her daughter was really cute, and that her daughter's got great English, and her daughter's, talking like crazy. And her daughter's interpreting to mom. So the social workers, so we're talking, and so I said to the lady, I said, if you could do anything in the world for a job, what would have been your dream job for you? And this whole time we're talking, she's like this, talking because she's so embarrassed. She's starving, and she's worried. And when she said it, she's kind of blossoms. It was like a flower blossom. And she said she had dreamed of being a veterinarian her whole life. She dreamed of being a veterinarian, and she would love to work at a vet place. She would even go and feed the dogs on the weekend for free. And I said, really? So I looked at the social worker. I said, can I help her with that? And she said, yeah. So I called this friend of mine that's a vet. And I called him and I said, hey, man, I got this lady here, blah, blah, blah. You don't even have to pay her. I mean, she doesn't have a green card, so you'd have to pay her cash or whatever. But she would come over there and just pet the dogs, to be with the dogs, feed them on the weekends. He goes, you're kidding me. And he said, where is she from? And I said, she's, somewhere in South America. And she goes, and I said, but her daughter lives with her. Her daughter's 13. She's worried about where they live. Her daughter can speak excellent English, but she's been here since she was like 5 and blah, blah, blah. And he says, hang on a minute. So this other lady gets on the phone. She says, hi, Steve, I'm Julie. I'm the other vet here. We have just adopted 2 girls from Guatemala, my husband and I, and we don't know how we're going to speak to them. She said, I have a garage apartment over my house. If this lady will move into that garage apartment and help me raise these 2 kids, I will pay her. Dang. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me.
Oh, that's so good.
And that's what happened.
Dang.
I tell you that story to tell you another story.
That's just, you're going to make me cry.
Back on the same board, I came up with this idea for the board. We were trying to grow the board. The North was predominantly made up of pastors. The churches had gotten together originally because people were coming to each church and getting stuff, and they came together as a group, some of the pastors, and said, why don't we start this little organization, and when somebody shows up, we'll send them to that organization, and we'll all contribute food and clothes and stuff like that. So that's how it kind of got started. So the pastor stayed on there, and it was a North Fulton Charities, but the guy that was running it for so many years, a guy named David Sonnenberg, was president, called me one day, and he goes, I'm sitting here going, we're North Fulton Community Charities, and we're only doing Rossville. We're not in Alpharetta. You're a guy that I know that knows everybody in Alpharetta. I want you to be on the board. So that's how I got on the board, and part of my job was to expand some of the contact in other areas outside of Rossville. So I came up with this idea where I drew up this like a matrix, and I went across the top of the matrix, and I put down all the things from a business standpoint that North Fulton Charities would need. We need a real estate person. We need an attorney. We need a CPA. We need a marketing person. We need a HR person. So I made this list across the top. Then I made this list down the side of all the different ways that we could tap into different groups of people. So I did all kind of stuff like ethnic, like black, white, Indian, Asian, whatever I could come up with. And then I did all the different religions I could come up. Do we have a Baptist? Do we have a Presbyterian? Do we have Episcopalian? Do we have a Muslim? Whatever. So I made this thing, and then I went and I said, okay, we've got this accountant who's Baptist. Okay, that box is checked. And I started looking to see where we had gaps. Okay. And so part of my job became helping fill the board. And one of the things that became apparent was we had pastors, but we didn't have any of the big pastors anymore. What was happening at the big churches is they were sending their youth minister or their minister of music or whatever. We weren't even getting the associate pastor, in some cases we were. But so everybody at that time, everybody's like, we need Andy Stanley on here. He could rock our board. So Andy's kids and my kids went same school. Yep. So I'm in the hall one day, and it's like a kid thing, and the parents are in the hall. And I said to Andy, Andy, do you remember when we were kids and after church, you just go visiting? He goes, visiting, yeah. I said, you as a preacher's son, you probably come over to my house for fried chicken, right? Yeah. I said, but, for me, my dad was kind of a little frustrated pastor, and we did a little bit of that. But then we would go out to eat, and then before we'd go home, let's stop by and see the Smiths or the Joneses or whatever. And you would just go to people's houses and just say hi. We were in the neighborhood. He goes, yeah, I miss that. I said, good, because I'm going to come visit you one day. Okay. Come on. So I go home, I tell my wife, I said, I'm going to go visit with Andy because I'm going to talk to him about this Norfolk Community Charities thing. She said, oh, no, don't go see Andy. No. He's too busy for that, blah, 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 blah. So one day I decided I'm going to go. So I just showed up at Andy's house, and I knocked on his door about 6 o'clock one Wednesday afternoon. I said, I'm here to visit. And he's looking at me like what does he want, I said, I don't want anything. I just want to drop in and say hi. I said, he's come here and sit at the table. So we sit at his kitchen table, and he's like, what's on your mind? And I said, I know you're out there and you're doing your thing, man, and you're going after it. And I want to know what's missing for you. Maybe I can help you with something that's missing for you. Yeah. What's missing? He goes, I don't feel like I'm as connected to the community as I'd like to be. And I said, you don't mean it. Let me tell you a story, Andy. And I told him that story about that lady. And he joined that board. And the first thing we did was they had one of their big events that they have at their church. And all the money went to Norfolk and Charities. And they gave us I don't know what the number was, $150,000. It was like we'd never seen anything like that. And he stayed on the board for, I don't know, a year or two. And he told me later, he said, I really got to know some of the people in the community. It was a great thing. But then he ended up, now we got somebody else from the church. But that story got us in with a guy that we probably would have never gotten to. I think the story was a critical piece for him. And I don't think people tell enough stories about their philanthropy stuff because the story can grab you and really make you feel it differently, don't you think?
So that's how Andy Stanley got on the board.
That's my interpretation of it. He may tell a different story, but that's what I remember.
Steve, you're just, you are the model for uncommon philanthropy. And I just love these stories. And, you're an idea person, but you know how to implement it too. People have ideas for days, but they just, they talk about it and nothing ever gets done. So I love it that you're an idea person, but then you get in the trenches and you get it done.
I'm at a point where I just tell them they're going to do it. Okay? So think about that. If you feel strongly about it and this person is your buddy, you just walk up to them and say, man, I need $100. I told that guy the other night, I said, I need you to buy this door for $1,000. And he bought the door.
But that's trust that
I
you've established.
I went to another table and I said, have y'all gotten up your money for your table? Well, we gotten up a little bit. I said, it's not enough.
Yeah.
You need this table right here. These people, y'all need to come up with at least $500. And they gave $750.
I love it. Well, and I think you've been very intentional in developing those relationships,
Yes.
kind of going back to the beginning of the conversation. And people are like, whoa, I don't know anybody. It's like, well, you're in your house by yourself all the time. You know, you have to get out and go meet people. It's not really that hard. That's a whole lot of fun.
But if you put equity in, you're going to get equity back. That's what people don't understand. They don't give equity. So I tell this story a lot. Lead with your assets, not your agenda. So the story is this. If we go outside and there's a homeless person out there, I'm not going to be able to talk to that homeless person about my agenda. My agenda is I need to do a mortgage or I need him to hire me to do a speaking gig, and he probably can't provide that, right?
Right.
But I have assets that I can bring to him. What are my assets? And people don't think about all the assets they have. Your assets are all the education you have, all the places you've lived, all the people you know, all the business and hobbies and all the knowledge you have. So I can say to this homeless person, hey, man, do you need a ride? I got a car. Do you need a place to take a shower tonight? I'll buy you a hotel room. Do you need a dinner? I got a buddy that owns a restaurant. How can I help you? And then I can tap into my world to ask them for that help, right? And so people don't do that. They don't lead with their assets. People don't go ask people for money because they go in directly with the ask for the money. Hey, would you give $100 for my kid's baseball team? When if you went in and said, hey, what's going on in your world that you're trying to do to raise some money for? Well, my little girl soccer team's going on a trip. We're trying to raise, $1,500 for go. Hey, how can I help you? And you give. And then they might turn around and say, how can I help you? And you say, well, I'm trying to raise money for this. And they'll give to you. Yeah. They may not. But then next time you can go in there and say, hey, remember when you needed that money? I gave you a little money. I need a little money. Can you help me? I'll tell you this funny story. So remember I told you that the Rotary Club in Roswell was full of all these older, more mature men, right?
Right.
And they were all people I looked up to in business. One day, one of the guys, Walt Nielsen, he calls me one day and he goes, hey, Beech, you want to join the 500 Club? And I said, no. What's the 500 Club? He said, it's a club where anybody in the club can call you because they've got something going on that's important to them. And what they call you and say, hey, man, I need $500. It might be for a philanthropic thing or whatever, just something they got going on. And they can, at one time a year, they can call you and ask you for a check for $500, and you can't ask them what it's for. It doesn't matter. But the same thing is you can call them and ask them for a check for $500. I said, who's in that club? And he goes, this guy, this guy, this guy. And I'm like, these are all the cool people. And I go, yeah, I'm in. He said, good. Write me a check for $500. He came up. It wasn't 10 minutes and he was at my office. He goes, where's my check? And I'm like, you sorry rascal. But then about 2 weeks later, I had something. I said, write my check. And I went by there and he had my check. And so I've done that sort of thing a couple of different times. Tell people, hey, you want to join the 500 Club, or I'll say the $100 Club or whatever. So there are people in the community, and a lot of those are the people that are in the chambers and the Rotary Clubs. They're in the community trying to make the community better, and they understand the giving principle, right?
Yeah.
It was just we got to draw those people who haven't felt that sense of community yet. We've got to get them involved. So if they're not in a church or they're not involved, if they're in a school thing, the PTA's talking to them, or they're in a church, they're seeing those opportunities. But there's so many. I mean, my thing, my buzz is I'm the guy that knows everybody in town, right? So one day I went down to the main red light in downtown at 7:30 in the morning when traffic was through, and I said, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to look in every one of these cars and I'm going to see how many people I know that come through this red light. Mm-hmm. And I was there for about 20 minutes and I probably saw 5 people, and there must have been 6,000 cars that came
Yeah.
by. And I'm like, I'm just a blip, right? We've got 70,000 people in Alpharetta, and let's just say I know 4,000. There's that many more people that have no clue that I even exist on the planet, right?
Yeah.
So how do we get to those people?
Exactly.
And part of
And
that
the
is
engagement piece. I think that's kind of the hard part. How do you make that initial engagement?
so when I started doing the concerts, I've met thousands of people that I would have never met. When I got involved with the Rotary Club and doing stuff with the Rotary Club, I met hundreds of people that I wouldn't have met. So each time you do some of those things, it gives you a different reason to call on a different group of people.
Yeah.
That's what's cool.
That's very cool. Okay, you ready for the lightning round?
Yeah.
Okay. Sweet or unsweet tea?
Sweet.
Allman Brothers or Leonard Skinner?
Leonard Skinner.
Favorite hobby?
Motorcycle riding and hunting.
Daily activity that brings you joy?
Walking.
Your biggest mistake that taught you the greatest lesson?
It's not lightning, is it? People can't buy from you if they don't know you exist.
Okay, that's good. Best marriage advice?
Fight for a draw.
Okay,
Not for a win, for a draw.
love it. Best part of living in Alpharetta, Georgia?
Sense of community.
Love it. What is something people might be surprised to learn about you?
I'm a pretty open book. I really don't know. One of the coolest things I've ever done is I decided we were riding dirt bikes a lot a couple years back, and I came up with the idea that we should we'd do something that we could tell our grandkids that we did. And there's like 30 of us. We'd go out to Colorado and ride. So we came up with the idea to ride our dirt bikes across the United States. And so the guy came up with the plan. We had one guy that was sort of into that. And we started at the Mexico border, and we rode up the Continental Divide to Canada. And we did a state a year, so it took us 4 years. We did a week each year. And then after we did that, they said, "What are we doing next, Beech?" I said, "We're going coast to coast." So we rode our dirt bikes from Charleston, South Carolina to Coos Bay, Oregon. And it took us 5 years to go all the way across the country. And we estimated about 80% of that was on dirt.
That is cool.
On a dirt bike, not a Harley, on a dirt bike.
That is cool. Best part of being an uncommon philanthropist?
Best part. The unexpected look on people's faces when they don't know what you're fixing to hit them up for. Then you do. They're like, okay.
Love it. So the tag is let go. You know how Tom Brady, he's like famous for his let's go. So mine is let go.
Let go.
Come on, give me a big let go.
Let go! You like that?
I knew you would deliver on that one. Steve, thank you so much for being here, for being you, for all you do for our community and your world. Truly are an uncommon philanthropist.
Thank you.
I wish I had a big button I could give you, or a coffee
I
cup
love
or
you.
something.
I love being here, and I love what you're doing, and I hope you just rock it.
Oh,